Hey, this is Bryn with the Mama on the Rocks, and we are here for our Fridays Are for Facts expert interview. And I'm here with my brother-in-law, Jason,
Hello.
my favorite brother-in-law. Do I have any more? Well, I guess Brad technically is a
Yes.
brother-in-law. We won't tell him. He won't probably see this. Um, so I'll let Jason tell you a little bit more about his educational background here in a second. But what we kind of want to do today is, I don't know how it became July, but here we are. And so I feel like we jumped from everybody's sick in March to now, holy crap, we're about to go back to school. And so I wanted to start us out with some experts, just kind of hit or miss through July, people in the education field, so we can kind of have an opportunity to talk about anxieties we have going back to school after a pandemic, as well as because we obviously we know that's different state to state and even just county to county or whatever your district is doing. We also want to talk about just kind of like some tips from an administrator. What can we kind of expect, because we'll have, I think in 2 or 3 weeks, we have somebody coming on that's going to teach us how to put together an IEP binder, which is a huge thing for parents like us. Audrey has 2 extreme kiddos. Is your son your oldest? So he's a year younger than Briggs. And then she has a daughter she's very young, right? Is she 2?
4.
4, okay. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Jay, why don't you just tell them a little bit, just like I basically in the ad, I said that you have held many educational positions, including teacher, athletic director, assistant principal. You're getting ready to transition into a new position. So kind of talk about how long have you been in education? Why did you want to be in education? And that kind of thing.
Well, I finished my 16th year in education. Quickly, realized I wanted to become a teacher. I was going through school to be a physical therapist, and I quickly changed that. I had a biology minor with my education, so I started teaching high school science. And the school I was in actually was closing down through consolidation just because the enrollment in that division went so low. So I quickly, after 3 years of teaching, became athletic director when that was a full-time job at a high school with 1,400 kids.
Holy cow.
So I did that for 2 years and then became an assistant principal at that school for 5. And for the past 6 years, I've had my dream job. I was the principal at an elementary school, which was a pre-K through 7 school. And when I came there, we were accredited with Warren in the state of Virginia. And then we just received word that we were in the top 70 schools in Virginia this past year. So we brought everyone together through a lot of collaboration and really turned that school around. So I just recently have been appointed as the director of operations in our school division. So I'm looking forward to another role of administration very quickly. So my first official day was Wednesday, so I'm hitting the ground running.
Yeah. So we've got, in this group, we have about 60 moms, and there are some who have extreme children that are older, like teens and young adults. But for the most part, they're around our kids' age. So you've been Briggs's uncle for his whole life. So you've been able to kind of see that progression as he's gotten diagnosed and different behaviors he has, and had the sort of foreknowledge to see what we deal with when we're around versus how he acts when he's with y'all and he's not with us, which is very different. So talk to us a little bit about, as an elementary principal, and knowing that this is going out to a lot of moms who are raising elementary school kids, what are some tips you would give them as far as working with their child's teacher and working with the administrators at their children's schools as they go into maybe their first IEP, maybe their first evaluation, and they know their kid has some diagnosis, like navigating that? What are some tips you would give them?
Well, as we always start an IEP meeting, we try to really open that conversation that you need to be an advocate for your child, because we only see what they are at school. And we've gone through a lot of IEPs. And as you were saying about Briggs, he's a different child for me and my wife at our house without you and Spence there. And a lot of that, is attention-seeking behavior and things like that as well. But the same thing at a school. I mean, when you have concerns that you are seeing at home, you really need to voice those to your child's teachers and administration and the IEP team, because you are a true member of that IEP team. Yes, we all have a vote at the end, but no one's voice is louder than the other. And So don't go in there thinking, well, I feel silly about asking this question, or, really taking a stand for, I really need this accommodation for my child because I know I need to go ahead and have this in works because I can see how his behavior is going to progress, and he's going to need this as he progresses through school. So never think that you're bothering school officials, you're asking too much, or you're asking for too much clarification, because those meetings are really to hash everything out. And we've had a lot of difficult ones, in my experience. And once it's said, I think everyone feels better. But if you don't say it, it's kind of like there's always something that everybody leaves a meeting like, "Ooh, I wish I would have said that." And that's from both sides. The teachers kind of feel like, "Ooh, I see this behavior. I don't really want to say anything."
Sure.
And the same from the parents. So it's best just to lay it all out on the table.
And we talk a lot about your level of transparency, because like our child goes to private school, we don't technically have to disclose all of his diagnoses, but we choose to because it's gonna, in our opinion, it will get him the best services and the best care. But there are a lot of parents that, and I've been on the teacher side of it too, and so have you, so you understand, sometimes when that little label comes up beside their name when you're doing attendance, there are teachers that will kind of chit chat and be like, well, I have this kid and he was this and this and this. And so sometimes if you're not really guarded, you can have an idea of a child's behavior before they come in, which isn't really fair to them. So we always encourage parents to take a lot of notes when you're in the IEP meetings.
Mm-hmm.
If there's terminology that's mentioned that you don't know, ask okay, you said this, I'm not sure what that means, or can you clarify what that means? For me, when Briggs had his first evaluation in kindergarten, I had a lot of questions about why the people that were on his IEP team were on that, because it was like a fifth grade teacher, the school guidance counselor and the principal made sense to me. His teacher was in there, which made sense to me, but their original evaluations were like 5 minutes randomly. And I was like, hold on, you can't get a good grasp with 5 minutes of observing a kid you don't see all day. So are there things that you would like suggest that parents ask when they're in those meetings, or even maybe information that would be relevant that happens at home that would be helpful for the IEP team to know at school?
Well, definitely. A lot of the process should start in like a child study where you're getting a lot of data and you're trying different strategies to see, do we need to go with an IEP? Yeah. So that's the most important, is really stress in that child study meeting, like, let's try this, because people are afraid of labels. And I think special education has really changed in the last 10 years. When I was a student, that was a long time ago, you were labeled and you were separate.
Right.
But now even our most severe and profound kids, we try, especially in public education, we try to find ways to do push-in inclusion with them. And it just, not only does it make more sense for that child to feel welcome, but it teaches, empathy to the other students. Oh, well, everyone's included when we do direct instruction, or when we have a lab for science. In elementary school, they're really basic, but we've tried to bring in all our students, and it builds a community of, we're all similar, not different. So parents need to also talk about that. Like, when I was in school, it was separate. Yeah. But now I really want it to be full inclusion. And, in situations, you need to fight for your child to be pushed in as much as you can. And so that really does help the culture of the class and keeps them from feeling isolated.
Are there any red flags that you would caution parents, like, hey, if somebody on your IEP team mentions this, maybe ask a question? Because, for instance, I know as a teacher, when I was teaching high school, I wasn't allowed to have a parent meeting and be like, hey, I'm pretty sure your kid has ADHD. You should probably get him tested for that. Like, that was crossing the line. Mm-hmm. But I would have people say, I have had people say stuff to us about getting our child medicated. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you know how to say that. No. Yeah. So, like, are there things like that you can let us know? Because there will be dozens of people will watch this playback later to see, like, oh, maybe they're making notes, getting things ready for their first child study or whatever this year. So what are some things like, hey, if they say that, you should maybe ask questions?
Well, I would say definitely if they're talking about, services, like we may not be able to provide that service here, then they may be looking of an alternative placement for your child. So you need to really clarify, now what does that mean? Does my child is unable to be served there? Ask questions about what that means. And definitely, a school cannot recommend that your child is medicated or recommend that you go get them evaluated for that, but they can ask you, has your physician talked to you about your child's behavior? And they're really probably talking and trying to get you to open up, has the physician noticed tendencies of ADHD or other diagnoses? And that's truly, as a public educator, administrator, I'm not trying to pry, but we need as much information as we can, because when our school psychologist evaluates them, like you said, we would like that they would have 2 hours, and sometimes when we have to give educational observations, it may be the guidance counselor or the special education teacher or another teacher, a Title I teacher, and they go and observe your child for 30 minutes. They're just seeing a snapshot of what your child's actually doing. So those are things like, well, how much time did you really spend with my child? How much, as you're going through a child study, maybe like, could, someone spend, observe them more than once? Because, truly, we have to have an educational evaluation for the IEP that can be 30 minutes. But if you're having concerns about that, ask them to observe them more than once in a different class. Maybe it's, an interest level that they don't like in math class. And can you observe them when they're not in a rigorous academic situation? Like, how are they acting in art class?
Can you ask them, like I know for our son, he was medicated going into public school. But obviously, like any mental health meds, the doctors are changing those all the time. So is it possible for me as a parent to say, listen, observing him first thing in the morning isn't going to give you a true picture because his meds are like fully working. So can you go and watch him between like 1 and 3? Because that's when like you're going to really see the things he's struggling with.
And I think if you have open communication with those teachers, they're going to reach out to you. It's like, we're noticing that your child, if you've been open with them and say, my child is taking medication, we're giving it to them at 7 before they get on the bus. And then they may say, well, at 2 o'clock, it has wore off.
That's right.
Could you consider letting the school administer that at 8 o'clock? So when they get off the bus, they get it. By the time their first class starts, it's in their system and it lasts them an entire day of school. So communication is the most important thing.
And when you're, I know one thing, I knew a little bit more than the average parent because I was an educator, but still didn't know everything I needed to know. I think I could always be learning, and everybody can. But so one thing, Briggs was not able to get him, he did not qualify for an IEP or a 504, but they were able to put certain accommodations in place. I mean, he was so young too. But so one thing was, like small groups. He does not work well in small groups. He gets very distracted. He wants to be the center of attention. So like you said, attention-seeking behavior, that can be a big problem. But he does fantastic when he's one-on-one because he does have an accelerated academic brain. And so that has been really helpful. And that was one thing that we've been able to talk, because like you said, we had open communication. We could say to his teachers, they were sort of struggling in public school and giving him more work. And he was noticing, thinking he's in trouble, And I said that more work really isn't probably the answer, different work, or give him responsibilities. So make him in charge of, so there were kids that were struggling in math, which he's really good at. And so he was able to partner with them. So being able to kind of know your kids' strong suits, I think is really important going in, almost as important as where they struggle, because it allows the teachers to know, I mean, you want to set any kid up for success. And so if there are places where they can kind of pile that praise on that child, I think it really makes a difference. You have been an administrator both at a small school as well as a large school. Can you talk about like the differences as far as getting services for children that have special needs or extra needs? You talked a little bit about more mainstream inclusion versus separate inclusion. Are there differences there that you see, or because I know a lot of people right now, especially going into this school year, maybe more so than ever, are considering homeschooling, are considering a private school, are considering a different district entirely because of the number of kids, because of COVID and everything. Can you talk a little bit about are there differences in your school size with getting your kids services? And
Well, it still comes down to the culture of the school. We had 1,400, 9 through 12, and that's not a great large school, but it's a large school in rural Virginia.
Sure.
And so we still tried to have those personal relationships with our students, and that was at a high school, because you need to make sure that the case manager, guidance counselors
Right.
have a true relationship with the child, because they're more able to speak for themselves
Right.
at that age. Now, the school I'm at, we have 140 students, pre-K through 7, one teacher per grade level. 18 is the max class. I mean, that's setting.
It's magical, by the way.
It is. It's like a private public school.
Right.
And the amount of direct conversations we have with parents is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think that attributes to our success that we've, experienced in the last 5 years, is just building those relationships. So there is a huge difference, but I don't think, depending on the size of the school, it really matters if that school is the right fit for your child, because, if it's a larger school, they should have a larger staff.
Right.
But you've got to make sure that they are being met. At a high school, a lot of parents are less involved. We see that in all our parental involvement studies. When you're a pre-K through 2nd grader, those parents come to PTA meetings. They are there for parent-teacher conferences. And then it's a little less at your 3rd through 7th grade. And then at the high school, usually the parents that you don't need to see are the ones that show up because they're involved in anything, but their child really doesn't need that much attention. So I think no matter what the setting is, if you are a vocal advocate and really doing what's best for your child, the school will too.
Now I know I taught at a high school level, and I had experiences with fantastic special ed aides and special ed teachers, and I had some less than fantastic experiences. And I was very vocal as the educator, and look, if you're going to be in my classroom online shopping, probably know what you should be doing. Like, maybe you get involved with these kids. But as parents, when you're in those IEP meetings, asking those questions to make sure you get your kids' needs met. I thought it was important that you were saying, if they're saying they don't think they can meet your kids' needs, ask what that means. There's actually a parent in this group whose son was looking into going to where Briggs goes, and he needs one-on-one attention for specific subjects. Well, they don't offer that. They just have a small staff. They can't. And so that was a question. Those were questions that came up. And I think that's really important to kind of arm yourself with those questions. But especially in the climate we live in now in our country, so many people, and parents specifically, go into any situation from the defensive. And I'm super guilty of doing that myself. So I think it's important, if they haven't given you a reason to be defensive, assume that everybody has your child's best interest at heart. That's important. And I know you, so I know the kind of person you are as just a man and a husband and a father and an uncle, aside from being an educator. But we don't always get that opportunity to know what kind of people are, involved with our kids. Audrey, are you sending your kids to public school this year?
Well, we have no idea.
Haven't decided.
We have not decided. No. Yeah, but we were having issues with our what?
I was getting ready to say, I know April's been going back and forth with that too. I think Melissa has decided to homeschool her oldest, but not the younger ones.
Yeah, we're looking at cyber. Our district hasn't released like a plan yet, but we were having issues with them before with IEP meetings and them not having our best interest. So we don't have in place what we needed, and we won't have it when we start. So that's an issue for us.
Talk a little bit. I know everything that we talked before about stuff with COVID and going back into it. So our group, there are a lot of not only kids that have diagnoses, but also parents who struggle with anxiety, depression, things like that. So sending your kids back to school is obviously terrifying in this situation, even if your kid wasn't high risk. But a lot of our kids are high risk because of the meds they take or their diagnosis. So can you talk, I know everything's district to district, state to state, and you're in Virginia, and you're in Pennsylvania, right? Yep. So, and we have people all over, we have people in other countries. So it's not going to be the same for everyone, but talk a little bit about precautions, because you're at an administrator level, so you have a little more insight than a lot of the rest of us get. What are some conversations that are being had to keep our kids safe?
Well, we are really mandated in Virginia to follow the CDC guidelines. So, our plan, we're trying not to make rash decisions. We sought parent involvement. We got survey results back, how many thought they would ride the bus, how many can we accommodate. And then with the CDC guidelines, we're probably going to look at an A-B schedule. Mm-hmm. And so a group of students will come Monday, Tuesday, we'll deep clean the building on Wednesday, a whole nother group comes Thursday, Friday, a deep clean Saturday. But on every day, everything's going to be disinfected, sanitized. And so I don't think that's going to change. We are hoping in Virginia that we'd have what's called the new normal after phase 3 of reopening, which, maybe that would allow all schools to open fully and have kids back. But the new focus on sanitation is not going to change. I think we have a wonderful custodial staff at all our schools, but there's going to be increased cleaning. There's going to be increased disinfecting on the bus. Instead of once a week, it's going to be daily. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that's going to change, which should help the anxiety of, families to know that the school system definitely does not want to have a COVID-19 outbreak in their school.
Kidding.
Because then that school will have to revert back, probably close for a week minimum, and then go to virtual. So
will they supplement, like if my kid goes on Monday and Tuesday, will there be online lessons the other days?
Yeah. So the way our school system's looking at, if you were an A day, you'd go Monday, Tuesday, and then you would have virtual assignments Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or vice versa, which is tremendous work on the teachers.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's all decisions that parents need to make. Well, does that suit my child? If you're high risk, and, you think that the public school curriculum is still wonderful, we're giving our families the option to go virtual every day. Mm-hmm. So a lot of flexibility there. We're also going to alter our start time or drop off and pick up time. So families who are apprehensive about dropping or their kid riding the bus, they can bring them to school.
That's awesome.
They can be more, social distance, in the awaiting study hall area.
One thing that I think their school did awesome, and they live in, like he said, rural Virginia. So like where we are, we've joked that I'm in the black hole of Tennessee for internet, where our house is. And so a lot of kids don't have access to internet. And I think that's a big deal in a lot of places, is whether or not they have access to it or can afford it. And so that's a whole other conversation about equity. And so I loved that you guys had parent pickup days where you could get your work printed out. Mm-hmm. Because I know that's one thing we've talked about that a lot, right? About how our kids are like, forget it. If you have to be on a Zoom call, you might as well not even tell them anything. They're not going to listen. They're totally distracted. And so being able to use their hands, whether it's on a worksheet or whether it's, doing an experiment or something, is so much more effective for them learning. Is there any concern at the higher levels about kids coming back and having had 3 months off, before summer, and what they've retained, and then going into a change schedule and like, holy cow. And I mean, us as special needs parents, we're like, our kids literally got no accommodations. And we know, like Spence and I have both homeschooled. I'm licensed in 2 states to teach. Like we know we actually have it good compared to most. And so I can't imagine just your average person being like, I guess I'm your teacher now, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
That we've had those conversations. There's going to be a learning gap that we have to assess quickly. And, we've talked about the special education side of it, that there will probably be some more referrals. Parents have been working with their children like, oh, I see that, when I'm working with my child, they can't do this. And, all that may change the number of parent requests for testing we have. And of course, when the parent requests it, we've got 65 days to do it as a public school. So we've had those conversations. It's going to be difficult on everyone.
Yeah.
But knowing that I don't foresee any school system not having those conversations this summer, because we're all trying to prepare what's best to reopen schools. And, as you were saying a while ago, there are some who may not be in the correct profession, but 95% of the people I've ever worked with, they want to do what's best
That's
for
right.
kids.
I mean, what other profession did you see people, I mean, within a week, just be like, magically now they fixed all their lessons so that it can be online, and I'm from my house and here I am and here's how we're going to do it. And that was pretty incredible to see. No matter how you feel about your kid's teacher, like that was pretty amazing to see that. We only have a couple minutes left, but will you talk a little bit about whether or not different school districts are doing A/B schedules, or whether they're trying to spread kids out more, or whatever they're trying to do? What impact do you think that's going to have on socialization for kids? Because that's a big thing we talk about in our group, because our kids struggle a lot of times with socialization, with reading social cues, and that's a big con. And you can weigh in on this too, Audrey, if you feel like you have something to say. But that's a big con to homeschooling in general, but especially when you have a child with extra needs, because they need to be in the presence of other kids to figure out what is socially acceptable and normal.
I don't know if y'all saw the American Pediatric Association sent out the report, I think it was last week, but we need to open schools. And a lot of that was for the mental health of children. Yeah. And that's a big concern of ours. We want school open. We want kids in school for that piece, because that's, I'm a proponent of public schools because that's where a lot of kids learn social norms,
that's
social
right.
cues, how to get along with others, which, is difficult in itself. And I think public school is the best place to teach that. But we need kids in school. I mean, I know in our division discussions, we would love to, by August 1st, be beyond phase 3 here in Virginia. Now, we're going to follow CDC guidelines for liability of our school division, but, we are in a district that has low cases of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So we may apply for a waiver to have more kids on the bus than recommended, because we want kids in school. And I don't know of an administrator or teacher I've talked to who doesn't want their kids there. Yeah. They miss their kids. They know the students are missing each other. And so in our parent survey, I mean, it was over 3/4 of them want their kids in school too, because
we're tired of them. We want to go back.
100%.
And the ones who said they want to keep their kids virtually, it was because, the mother's pregnant. They would hate for the child to bring something back.
Sure.
And, at a division level, we're looking at a lot of studies and, reports that come out about the number of students who have infected adults with COVID.
Right.
And that is so low that we need to bring the kids in for the social emotional piece, because that is going to be so big. I mean, thinking about, as we were talking about, we've had some special education discussions. You need to talk to your schools. Like, if you have a small child, are y'all going to educate them that there's going to be some adults in the building wearing masks? Mm-hmm. How's that going to affect your child? And so a lot of those pieces, you've got to have those conversations with now, because we can't wait till we start on August 10th. It's like, oh, shoot, we got to figure out how to tell kids that the adults, when they come work with you one-on-one, they're going to be wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So it's
there have been some districts near us that have said, like, anyone 6th grade or older has to wear a mask. And I'm like, and we've had so many discussions, like, it's laughable, honestly, when you have kids with sensory needs. Like, there's no dang way, like, you can tell me it's a law you want, like, that's not going to go over well. So
and we're looking at that too. Like, we're going to offer them, but it's not going to be required, because you can't expect every child to do that. And then, if they have sensory issues, they're going to be putting their hands to their face 10 times more than
That's
they would
exactly right.
normally.
And we have a mom in here that has anxiety and asthma, and she's like, I can't even wear my mask for long enough to go to the grocery store because I start to have a panic attack. Like, it feels like I can't breathe. And so the last thing I just wanted to talk about, and kind of off of what you said too, as far as the mental health aspect, along with that article, I did see that article that came out. They were talking about instances of suicide and mental health being up like 40% in the last however many months, 4 months now, 5 months now. And so do you guys have a plan in place, or have you discussed as far as having your guidance counselors, your sped teachers, whatever, available? Because I know I've taught in rural Virginia. I've also taught in inner city Ohio, where I had kids who were homeless and kids who had no parents and kids were in foster care and everything. So they wouldn't have had that support. And my heart has broken over the last few months, as I'm sure so many educators have, of where they know most of their kids only get to eat when they're at school. Yes. And districts have done an amazing job feeding whoever. Doesn't matter if your kid's 18 or under, come get food, which is awesome.
That's what we've been doing.
But have there been discussions about that, or is that something that's on anybody's radar about making sure staff is prepared that some kids may come back and they've been forced to be in an abusive home for 4 months without the ability to escape? Or, special needs kids who are having and I know we've talked about this a bunch in here, our kids are struggling. Neurotypical kids are struggling. So our kids are struggling times 10. And it's making us struggle, and we're not as fun to get along with because of it. So do you have plans, or have you talked about that? Because I think that's something that I wish I could tell administrators as an extreme parent, plead with them, please have something in place because these kids are hurting.
Well, it just so happens to coincide with Virginia's new mandate, and your state's probably different, but we have a mental health professional development requirement for all staff to watch this, and it just worked out. So when we talked about that, we watched it as a division team. It's like, well, this will really help our staff be looking for some mental health issues in students and their behavior, to have red flags. But when we're doing an A/B schedule, we've talked about our guidance counselors are going to have to come in and talk to students and try to get them to open up. How have they been doing? And so we've talked about, our staff for that first week, they just need to work on building relationships with their students and not worry about moving on with the curriculum. Definitely we're going to assess to see where they are, but that doesn't need to be on day 2. Once you go over your classroom rules, we're going to have a test, and none of this has happened. You have to have that conversation, build relationships. And I think our professional development, is going to be great to open our educators' eyes to be looking for those things.
Audrey, did you have any other questions specifically for Jason as just an administrator or having been a principal or anything?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to give you a chance before we jump off here. I would just encourage everybody who watches the replay and stuff, just be open-minded when you go in. Understand that the schools, they're people too. They've had their kids at home. They have stuff that they have to, they want, like you said, 95% of them want what's best for your kid. There, of course, are going to be some duds, but that's anywhere you go. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Be open about your kids so they can get the needs that they have met, but also make sure that you're asking questions, you're taking notes. And like I said, in a couple of weeks, Melissa is going to be our expert, and she is the queen of IEP binders. I swear she should be selling her plans because they're awesome. But she's going to walk us through how to make an IEP binder, which is super helpful because it's going to show you what tabs should you have that you make sure you keep up with so you can show progression for your kid. And that's a big one I did a homeschooling video a week or so ago about make sure you keep a binder up in case you get audited. You want to show that your child is progressing in the different core subject areas. So make sure you have a list of questions, just like if you're going to the specialist. Have a list of questions when your kid gets their case study done or their child study done or their IEP meetings. Be open with their teachers, communicate how they are at home. It's almost never going to be the same at school, which you should be thankful for. I'm always grateful that my kid keeps it together and then loses his ever-loving mind when he gets home, 2 seconds in the door and it's over. But I'm thankful that he knows to act, keep it together when he's in public. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you're checking out themomontherocks.com. There's a lot of resources, and there's an extreme children tab as well as a homeschooling tab. So if you're questioning that, there are 3 articles that go hand in hand, Homeschooling 101, 102, and 103, that can kind of walk you through what do you need to do for your state. I think there's even a free download for the letter you send to your state if you're considering it. So some helpful resources for you there that you don't have to pay for. If you guys have questions on this video once I post it, of course, put it in the chat and we will try to get answers to you. Audrey, always good to see your face. And Jason, thank you for taking your time to be here. I appreciate it. And Yeah, have an awesome 4th of July. We are going to have headphones for the fireworks if we make it that long. So I will see you soon. Bye.